Hello and welcome to today's PIR live event brought to you by Partners in Research Canada. My name is Stacey Joyce and I will be your host. Please remember, if you're joining us live, that you can ask questions anytime throughout the webinar by clicking chat in the top left corner of your Zoom window and making sure you change the to field to include attendees or everyone. That way everyone who's joining us live can see what questions are being asked across the country. When you do ask a question, please be sure to let us know who the question is from, whether that is a teacher's name, a school name, a city, or even which student came up with that question. We would love to give you a shout out when we ask it on your behalf. So today's guest is Taylor Tabobondung. He is a First Nation Conservation Steward in the Turtle Island Conservation Program at the Toronto Zoo. He's also a graduate student in the Department of Physical and Environmental Sciences at University of Toronto's Scarborough campus. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, Taylor. I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. I'm just going to share my screen. Awesome. So, Ani bozo, akai nagnana wandam ninna indigenous kaz, nindo dem minginzi, wisoxing and dimjaba. Miigwech. So I'll just translate what I just said for everyone. So I said, hello, greetings. My name is Aki, and I'm a member of the Eagle Clan from Wisconsin First Nation, and thank you for having me. So the introduction I just gave is a standard way that Ojibwe people greet themselves and introduce themselves, and we've usually used it at ceremonies, but I like to introduce myself always in this way. So more about myself and who I am. So my name, or as some people would call it, my Western name, is Taylor Tabobondung, and I work as a conservation steward as well as coordinate the Turtle Island Conservation Program at the Toronto Zoo. So TIC, as we refer to it, is a very unique partnership between the Toronto Zoo and the First Nation communities around Southern Ontario, and we aim to preserve cultural and natural landscapes. We work with our First Nation partners to share species at risk information present in their communities and work to build programs to address the needs of these species and activities that can help mitigate the effects that humans have on them. Now, that was a lot of words about what I do, so I'll give you a very simple example as to what some of my work entails. So last week, I traveled to a community with some of our team members in Central Ontario, and we built a turtle nesting beach. So what that entails actually is us traveling to the community and choosing a site. As you can see here, we clear the vegetation with some lands workers. We then use an excavator to dig about a 6-inch hole and lay some groundscaping cloth in the hole. And on top of that, we lay some pea gravel and then piles of sand. We then use rakes, shovels, and wheelbarrows to move the sand around. And with help of the excavator, we slowly but surely build a very gentle slope, as you can see here. Now, this slope that we developed, also self-facing, allows for maximum sun exposure and therefore heats the sand. So when the turtles lay their eggs, it allows for the sand to incubate the eggs. So we travel around communities building different habitat like this to target species at risk that are listed by the Ontario government in their recovery plans. So that's just one example. However, we've also built a very specific expertise in the collection of traditional knowledge and presenting that knowledge in storybooks. So we work to understand the similarities, the differences, and the value that both Western science and traditional knowledge offers. Now, to gather this information, we actually travel to these communities and sit with community elders, and we listen and learn from their stories, their firsthand experiences, and then we work as a team, usually in conjunction with a graduate student, to design a storyboard, a storybook, and an overarching story that incorporates their traditional knowledge with some general overall ideas of Western science. And then we focus all this information together to to address the conservation needs of this community. So as I was stumbling across my presentation, as I was building, I stumbled across some photos of some baby turtles, so I thought I'd just share them with you. So this is a turtle, this is a baby painted turtle. This is another baby painted turtle found in Rouge Urban National Park here in Toronto. And this is a baby spotted turtle. And actually, I'm unable to tell you the location of this turtle due to its endangered status, but very beautiful turtles. So now, part of our work here at TIC is developing some resources. So some of the resources we've developed are Identification guides. So as you can see here on the right, we offer identification guides for turtles, snakes, and frogs and toad species of Ontario. We also offer frog call CDs and turtle crossing science, as well as the storybooks, as you can see here. My apologies. As you can see here with the storybooks on the left. Now, all of our resources are offered in Mohawk, Anishinaabe, as well as English. So the Walking with Misquadazy and the Walking with Anowara, there are storybooks that we've partnered with community elders to build, and they also have an accompanying curriculum guide. So these resources are available for free online, and they can be ordered directly from us. Now, the goal of these resources is to offer First Nation communities and schools a resource that is culturally their own. We wanted educators, we wanted teachers, childcare professionals, and even parents to be able to share these stories with their children to inspire them about First Nation conservation and First Nation stewardship. But the most important part is that our culture is historically passed on by word. So if we are able to write this culture down and write our stories down, we're able to preserve this culture and inspire our youth. So that is the goal of building these resources. And I thought, what a better way than for you to truly grasp what I do here at Turtle Island Conservation than to share one of these stories with you. So this is called The Turtle with the Sun Under Its Chin. So one day, Nana Bozo was out walking and enjoying all that existed in creation. He admired the beautiful grasses and beautiful flowers. He admired the beautiful trees and birds. Just then, Mishomis, a bright, shining light in the sky, caught his eye and stopped him in his tracks. "Wow," he exclaimed, "that is beautiful." Nana Bozo was so struck by the beauty of Mishomis that he scooped it out of the sky and took it home and put it in a box. Well, the world became a dark, cold place where no food grew and the animals were always cold. This caused a great outcry, and all the animals held a big meeting to decide how to fix the problem of having no food and being cold. The animals decided that the only way to solve their problem was to rescue Mishomis from Nana Bozo's house. The biggest and fastest animals all tried, but they were unable to carry Mishomis out of the house without the bright star waking Nana Bozo. As the group tried to figure out what to do next, a little voice was heard saying, "I'll try." The animal looked around, but they couldn't see any voices. Then they looked down and they saw this little turtle, and they burst out in laughter. "What are you talking about? You're not big and strong. You're not fast. How are you going to rescue Mishomis from Nana Bozo's house?" Well, that little turtle was determined to show everybody that he could do it. So he shouted again, "I am willing to try." So all the animals wished him good luck, and off he headed to Nana Bozo's house. He carefully crept up to the house and creeped open the door. It was dark inside, but there was little light coming from the fireplace. The turtle carefully crept into the house, and spotting Nana Bozo sleeping in a chair in the far corner of the room. That little turtle was so relieved at not being discovered that he quickly decided he didn't have much time and had to find Mishomis in a hurry. In the opposite corner of the house, he spotted an enormous box. He thought to himself, well, that has to be where Nana Bozo hid Mishomis. He promptly headed over to the box. He stretched his long little neck out and lifted the lid to peek in. Sure enough, inside was Mishomis. The little turtle stretched his mouth wide open and put Mishomis inside. He then clamped his mouth shut so that no sunlight could escape and wake Nana Bozo. Carefully, he pulled his head out of the box. The little turtle, relieved with his luck, scrambled to the door as fast as his little legs could carry him. As soon as he got to the door, he opened his mouth wide and out flew Mishomis, right up into the sky. And that is how sunlight came back to the world. As a result of carrying that beautiful Mishomis in his mouth, the little turtle received a permanent reminder of his bravery. His chin was forever stained yellow, like the color of Mishomis. So now, the little turtle is celebrated as the turtle with the sun under his chin. His descendants can be found on local waterways to this very day. Chi-miigwech. So that story is talking about the Blandings turtle, which I've showed here, which is listed as threatened in Ontario and endangered in Nova Scotia, and is threatened federally. So as mentioned in the story, this turtle is easily identifiable by the yellow under its chin. And unlike other turtles, the Blanding turtle has a very domed shell. So it almost resembles an army helmet, whereas other turtles in Ontario tend to have a wider, more flat shell. And that is true for turtles across Canada as well. So this remarkable species can live up to 75 years in the wild, sometimes longer, and they don't mature until they're about 25 years old, which means they can't have babies until they're 25, which means that these populations take a very long time to recover. So at the Toronto Zoo, we have a sister program here called Adopt a Pond, and that program works to head start these turtles. So we go collect the eggs from different communities around Ontario. We breed and incubate the eggs here at the zoo. We feed the turtles and grow them for 2 years, and then we release them back into the wild. So that is one of our measures that we take to try to mitigate the effects on these animals. But some of the other habitat improvements that we also do are listed here as well. So the collection of species at risk data and listening to elder stories like the one I just showed you allows our team to understand the conservation needs of our community and determine what projects or what activities we can do with that community to help these species. So for example, last week we built a turtle nesting beach in a community in central Ontario. Later this fall, we'll be traveling to a community in northern Ontario to build a snake hibernaculum. So a snake hibernaculum is overwintering sites for snakes. They can go under a hole that extends under the water table so that these snakes can go below where the water freezes and stay warm, well, relatively warm for the winter. We've also traveled in the recent months to a bunch of communities in central Ontario, putting up bat boxes with our bat research team, as well as planting different species at risk plants and pollinator gardens across Ontario. So with all that data that we've collected and used, we target communities and target species at risk hotspots so that we can take measures to help mitigate the effects that humans have on them. So for example, here on the left, we have a turtle crossing sign that is offered in the Mohawk language. And on the right, we have one that is offered in Anishinaabe-Moan. So these resources are currently being displayed in 8 of our partner communities with the aim to extend that number up to 20 by 2020. These signs are also available in English via our sister program, Adopt Upon. So they are available to any community. That means anybody who's watching right now is free to order one from us if you'd like, and if you see there's a need for these signs in your community. So our conservation goal is very simple. We seek to find knowledge that will allow us to help conserve, protect, and guide First Nation conservation and stewardship activities, while ensuring that that strong connection to the land is not lost, but enhanced. And my goal as a First Nation biologist and the first biologist from my community, my brother, I have a twin brother and we were the first people in my community to ever go to university. And so our goal is to inspire the generations that will come after me and to inspire scientific work for First Nation communities. So I'd like to say Chi-miigwech for listening and Chi-miigwech for letting me share my message with you. And I'd like to say, if you have any questions, please open it up.
Well, thank you so much for that, Taylor.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and click that red stop share button, and then we'll be able to see your webcam view a little larger while you answer questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our very first question is from the grade 7s at Lawfield Elementary in Hamilton, Ontario. They're wondering, how many species do you help, if you had to hazard a guess?
How many species do we help, as in how many turtle species?
Well, they said species altogether. So maybe if you know the turtle number offhand, we could start with that one. But you also mentioned snakes.
Yes. So turtles offhand, we currently head start 2 different species here at the zoo. We are head starting Blandings turtles and wood turtles. But species overall, so we probably have targeted about 20 species this summer to work with across a variety of different families, including plants, insects, reptiles, amphibians, and mammals. I work with reptiles and amphibians mostly, so we're currently targeting the Massasauga rattlesnake, and we've also been targeting the gray rat snake, which is for anyone who's been to the region of Six Nations, which is a community in southern Ontario, just outside of Hamilton actually. They would be familiar with the snake, and we've been targeting them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we have a question from Aviva at Allenby. She would like to know how many turtle nesting beaches you have set up in all of Ontario.
All of Ontario, that's a big number. Okay. Me personally, I have set up 2. Our programs as a whole have set up around 10. The thing with turtle nesting beaches is if there's not any maintenance, they tend to grow back. So all the surrounding vegetation will overtake them. So without any maintenance, they tend to just, as we call it, get assumed by nature. So the ones that do have upkeep and are maintained do work very well.
Great. Well, we have lots of questions coming.
Yep. Sorry, I just. Okay.
Oh,
no,
your
I thought I
video's frozen, but I can hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure why I'm frozen.
Well, let's go ahead with another question. We'll see if it resolves itself in a minute. We have a question now from grade 3s at Holy Jubilee, and actually Isabella in particular would like to know how small turtles are when they are born, maybe in centimeters, and how big can they grow?
Yes, so that's a great question. So that's actually very much depends on the species. So centimeter wise, they are about 2 centimeters in diameter, which roughly is about the size of a toonie. So they start off very small. Now, depending on the species, they either they can grow very large. So snapping turtles, if anyone has seen them at their cottage, sometimes they're seen as about the size of a coffee table. Now, other turtles, such as a spotted turtle, they stay to about a diameter of 5 centimeters. So for the most part, they don't grow too much larger from infancy to maturity. So it really does depend on the species. Now, for that Blandings turtle I did show you earlier, the turtle with the sun under its chin, they start off about the size of a toonie at infancy and when they're hatchlings, and they are about the size. They're about 10 centimeters maximum across diameter of their shell when they're fully grown and mature.
And we have a question now from Andrew at Allenby, asking, what is the most common species of turtle in Ontario?
The most common species of turtle is the painted turtle. So those 2 baby turtles I showed you initially, those two little turtles, they're the most common species. And why they are the most common species is they are the least affected by our activity. So turtles live in wetlands, and humans like wetlands to build their cottages and vacation homes and lakeside property and waterside property. So most turtles, when you do destroy their wetland habitat, they won't go back to it. They're very specific on what sites they like to live in. That's not the case for painted turtles. Painted turtles are not picky at all. They will move down the lane if their house is encroached on, and they're even willing to bask on themselves. So they're pretty much the ultimate survivor, and they are therefore the most common turtle in Ontario.
And Jimmy from Hawkwood School would like to know, what is the largest turtle you have found or rescued, and what species was that turtle?
That's a great question. The largest turtle I've ever myself found is a snapping turtle. I don't know the exact size, but I can give you a kind of a comparison. His shell was probably about this big.
We still got your video frozen, but maybe this is a good time to just quickly try to see if we can get that fixed. If not, we'll keep going with audio.
Yeah.
But what you can do is in the bottom left corner of your screen, you can stop your video.
Yeah.
And then try just enabling that again. See if we can just sort of restart that. Okay. So you've done that already?
Yeah, I stopped it and started it again.
Okay, we've got a black screen, unfortunately. So your webcam has gone on strike for the day, I think.
I apologize for that. Does it help for you to know that yours is frozen as well?
Well, hopefully that's not the case for our audience, but that might be sort of incoming and outgoing from your location. So as long as we've got audio, I think we're okay to keep questions.
So I can continue to answer that in a different way. So the biggest turtle I've ever seen is a snapping turtle for sure, and I would say it was about as wide as a child. So about its shell width was about as wide as an average human. It was a pretty large turtle. I'd say diameter across maybe about 30 centimeters, and length of the shell maybe 60 centimeters. So they're fairly large snapping turtles out there. They can live for up to 75 years.
Wow, that's pretty large. I'm trying to picture that right now.
It's
go ahead.
About the size of a coffee table sometimes, yeah.
So next I have a question from students in Bragg Creek, Alberta, wondering how many turtles are rescued or helped due to your conservation efforts in this program?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I can't give you too direct of an answer because our monitoring is ongoing, and we currently have research projects which I can't really give out the results until we've published the results. But with that said, we do target a lot of species at risk populations in the province. So without giving out any numbers or anything I'm not allowed to say, we do have a significant impact on the species that we are targeting. And specifically with the head starting program that we do here at the zoo, we've released approximately 200 breeded turtles, baby turtles, into the wetlands surrounding the Toronto Zoo.
Wow. I'm just looking at our question feed right now. We have a lot of questions coming in. Thank you so much to our audience. I will get to as many of them as I can. Next up, we have a question from the students in grade 7 at Lawfield. They are wondering what they can do to help.
That's a great question. I always love to hear that question asked. So there are some citizen science initiatives that we offer here at the zoo that anyone in any community in Ontario could definitely get involved in. And with that said, you could even get involved in this program in another province, and would most likely be opening to expanding our provincial range. Now, with that said, the program is called Turtle Tally. So Turtle Tally, as in tallying up the turtles. Your teachers can search that online and find some information on our website that would allow them to partake in this program. But basically, what it is that when you see a turtle in the wild or anywhere in your community, you can check off via an indicator sheet. So we give an identification sheet that allows you to identify the turtle. Tell us where, in what location roughly it was located, and what species, and roughly the size, so that we know where these species are, and we can generate hotspot data maps. So we know we can target with crossing signs and road coverts so they can avoid road mortality, and we can also install nesting beaches and other habitat projects.
Excellent. Next up, we have a question from Finley at Allenby, wondering how many babies are born each year to turtles?
Ooh, pretty much just a lot of that depends on the turtle themselves and how old the turtle is, how well fed that turtle is. And then turtles are reptiles, so turtles lay eggs, right? So that number of the eggs laid can vary depending on the nutrition and size and age of the turtle, as well as how many eggs actually hatch depends on the location of the beach they've chosen, the predators that are active in the area, and if they're in an urban or rural setting. So with that said, here at the Toronto Zoo, the eggs that we incubate, we have a success rate of over 90% with our incubation, so we don't lose many turtles here. However, in the wild, it would be expected that over half of a clutch sometimes is lost to predators and predation. And then turtles being so small when they're first born, remember, they're about the size of a toonie, which is about 2 centimeters in diameter. They are very vulnerable to weather conditions. We have had some early thawing and some extended winters in Ontario in the past few years, which has made it very hard for these turtles to actually survive. So a lot of different factors and variables depend. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we now have a question from Belfast School in Calgary, and they're wondering when the tick program started, and also what is the length of a turtle's lifespan?
Ooh, those are great questions. So TIC, so Turtle Island Conservation, it's been around for about 10 years here at the Toronto Zoo. And we've been doing work like this for the past 10 years. I'm recently a new program coordinator, so I've only been here for the past year, but 10 years. And then how long a turtle's lifespan is, it really depends on the species, but turtles are a very long-lived species. And this might be the reason why historically societies have associated them with wisdom, because they are so long-lived. So as I was saying, the Blandings turtle, for example, the turtle with the sun under its chin, that turtle can live for upwards of 75 years. There have been some tortoises that can live, like giant Galapagos tortoises, for example, can live upwards of 100 years. So they are a very long-lived species, and it really does depend on the species. But with that said, for the most part, most turtles will live over 40 years. And when you do take them as a pet, this is a very, very important point for most people to understand, is that when you take a turtle as a pet, it has it will most likely outlive you. So you have to think about that when you take these pets, because we do have a lot of rescues that are people who took these pets on, these animals on as pets, and they're unable to care for them 10 years, 20 years down the road.
Right. Now, what I'm going to do now is, because we have this black screen, I'm going to share the Turtle Island Conservation website so that if anyone wants to know where to go for more of these resources and information, I'll just leave that on the screen for you. And then I'll go to our next question here from Chris at All Saints in Ottawa, Ontario. Wondering, Taylor, what is your favorite turtle species and why?
That is a great question. I actually have two because I am undecided, but I would have to say it's either the Blandings turtle, which I shared with you in the presentation earlier, or the spotted turtle. Now, the Blandings turtle, because I just love the story that I shared, it's my favorite creation story, and it hits home with a message for me that climate change is real and it can happen, and therefore, if we listen to the animals and listen to what is around us, we may be able to fight this together. And second off, my other favorite is the spotted turtle. Now, why I like the spotted turtle is because they're very cute, very small turtles. They don't grow to a very large size, and they have very unique spots all over the back of their shells, which, me being a First Nation member, culturally is significant as the stars in the sky. And there are some creation stories, and I won't get into that because that will take way too long, but that go along with that turtle. And for that reason, it is one of my favorite. Yeah.
Excellent. We have a question from Ross R. now. Charlotte would like to know, how long does it take for a rescued turtle to go back into the wild?
That's a great question. So that really depends. Rescue turtles, depending on their injuries, may never actually make it back into the wild. So if we have a turtle that has been run over, for example, and its shell is cracked in half, there are turtle care centers across Ontario. So if that turtle does make it to the center and its shell is able to be healed, it may not be strong enough to live a wild life anymore and may depend on humans for feeding and for protection. So it really does depend on the injury. But with that said, it probably takes around an average of a year or two to get a rescue turtle that is able to go back into the wild out into the wild.
And we have a bit of a fun question here from Isaiah at Hillcrest. He's wondering which turtle you deal with that is the fastest.
Ooh, so that's a very good question, and there's only one that is the fastest, and that is the spiny softshell turtle. Now, there's a very rare turtle here in Ontario, and there's only two populations actually known of, and they're in southern Ontario. It is a threatened and endangered species, so I'm not allowed to share those locations. However, this turtle has a very soft shell, so it doesn't have a hard shell like all the other 7 species in Ontario. So to make up for that, it is extremely quick. And when I mean extremely quick, for the most part, most people never see these turtles with a good glance because they are so quick and they're so in tune with their surroundings. But by the time you even come close enough to see it, it's already taken off. And when I mean quick, it's probably about, if you've ever tried to catch a frog and a frog dives underwater and runs away from you, it's probably about double the speed of that frog.
That's really interesting. We always think of all the turtles as very slow, but that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Next, we have a question again about sort of what students can do. So the first part, though, we've been asked why turtles choose sand to lay their nests. Yep. And Kylie wants to know if or how they can build habitats for turtles.
Yes. Okay, for sure. So I'll answer them in 2 parts. So for the first part, it's not necessarily sand that they're choosing. They just want a loose sediment that they're able to dig a hole in and place their eggs. But they're also looking for sediment that is exposed to the south, so that it has maximum sun exposure. And why that is because turtles don't sit on their eggs during incubation like most bird species do. And so therefore, the heat that's required to incubate these eggs is generated from the natural environment. So if they were to put it into a sediment like sand that over the day can heat up with the sun, then you can have the sand heat up enough to incubate the eggs. Now, with that said, the gender of turtles is actually determined by the temperature that they are incubated at, with around 30 degrees Celsius for females and 27 degrees Celsius for males, approximately. Now, for the second part of that question, as what can they do to build turtle habitats? For the most part, building a turtle nesting beach is kind of labor intensive. It requires a lot of experience and some very unique schematics that we've taken years to build. With that said, there are lots of turtle outreach and turtle conservation groups across the country in all the different provinces. And I'm sure that they would be more than thrilled to have any school, group, or community reach out to them and be willing to work with them. I know that if I was approached by any community or school group, I would not hesitate at the chance to work with them.
Thank you. Now this question, I'm glad this came up because I didn't think to ask it until now, but question from Hamilton, Ontario. If the students were to find a turtle, is it better to leave it there or to pick it up, especially if they're on the road?
Yes.
What should they do?
That's actually a great question. So it depends on the turtle state. If the turtle is injured on the roadway, you can do a few things. You can call the closest. So there's one in Peterborough. It's called the OTCC, the Ontario Turtle Conservation Center. And if you're within driving distance of Peterborough or close enough to one of their stations, you can drive the turtle to them and they will take it from you and treat the turtle. If that is not an option, you can also take it to wildlife care centers, that we have them here in Toronto as well. Now, if the turtle is not injured and you just see a turtle crossing the road, if you are comfortable and in a safe situation, you can pull your car over to the side of the road and you can get out and help it across the road. Turtles have an extremely good sense of direction and they will not get lost. They always know where they're going. So if it's walking across a road, you don't want to pick that turtle up and take it across the road where it came from, because that just means it's going to cross the road again. So you want to help it out to the direction it was headed to make sure it's safe. With that said, if it is a snapping turtle, you can lift it from the back of its shell, just underneath the tail. There's a little space where you can stick your hands and kind of wheelbarrow it across the road. Or you can also take the safer alternative, which is to take a branch, have it snap onto it, and then slowly just tug them or drag them across the road until they're safe.
Excellent. I just wanted to touch a bit more on the First Nations perspective,
yes,
as I think we've had a lot of questions so far about turtles in particular and details about turtles. But we also said that we were going to discuss today a bit more about the First Nations perspective of conservation, and even we referenced the 4 different medicines. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So as I did share earlier in my presentation during the traditional knowledge and Western science slide, I did place a medicine wheel. So that symbol is, it has multiple meanings. So I like to think of it as a circle, meaning that everything is connected. We are all inclusive, and no matter what you study or what you do, it has an impact. With that being said, that medicine wheel also does represent 4 directions, so east, south, west, and north, as well as our 4 sacred medicines, which are sweetgrass, cedar, tobacco, and sage. They also represent the different lifetimes and life cycles. So yellow, which is our eastern door and represents our sweetgrass, our tobacco, is adolescence, headed towards the left, red, black, and then white being your elderly age, and would also be your sage and time to reflect. Yeah.
So apparently I was reading students' minds in Alberta with that question. So in Bragg Creek, they were wondering if there's a tradition of conservation practices from First Nations people, and how those traditional practices and ways of knowing are advising the Turtle Island conservation efforts.
Yes, so there actually are forms of First Nation conservation that have gone back for thousands of years on this continent. So we are actually partnered with a community. They're called Alderville First Nation in Southern Ontario, just outside of Oshawa. And they do controlled burns. So they have a very, very unique habitat called the Black Oak Savanna. And there's very little of this habitat remaining in Southern Ontario. And this, what they do at this site is they do prescribed burns every spring. So it burns off all the invasive grass and all the old grasses from the fall before, and allows for fresh nutrients to invigorate the soil, and allows for the native plants, which were being overtaken and overshadowed by these invasive plants, to thrive and flourish. Now, I met with an elder a couple months ago, and I asked them in the community, why would the community have done this? Now, they would have understood the conservation ramifications, and they would have seen all the natural wildflowers that would have come from these actions. But the real reason they did this was that it allowed for very, very, very abundant swaths of flowers to come up, and that would attract the deer. And therefore, it made hunting the deer extremely easy. So these First Nation and stewardship activities were pretty much part of our lifestyles. It helped us to gain sustenance in a way that we didn't have to track down the herd. The herd came to us.
Very interesting. Well, that is all the time we have. Thank you so much, Taylor, for joining us and answering our questions and sticking it out through our video hiccup today. I think we were still able to get some of these important points out there for our audience.
I think so too. Thank you very much for having me. It was wonderful to talk with everyone and share these ideas. And if you have any more questions, or if you'd like any more information, you can always send me an email or check out our website.
Awesome. And just a quick note that next week on PIR Live event, we're learning about how mathematics can become mathemagic. You can find out more information on this, and also we're doing a webinar with one of Taylor's colleagues at the Toronto Zoo about Adopt a Pond in a few weeks. So all of that is in our schedule online at pirweb.org. So thanks so much for joining, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Miigwech.